Boing, boing, boing. Botania. That's right, it's time for the Botania guide. Now, we have a lot to cover, so we're just going to jump straight into it. So the first item you're going to want to make for Botania is floral fertilizer. Really simple to make, just bone meal and 4 dye. Now, when you put these on grass, it's going to make these mystical flowers. Collect up a bunch of these flowers because you're going to need them later on. Now, once you've got one of every flower, you're going to want to start duplicating them. Use one of the flowers in a crafting grid and you'll get 2 petals. Stick those 2 petals in the ground, add your bone meal, and you will get these tall flowers. Break these flowers with shears, and then you can turn each of the tall flowers into 4 petals. Repeat this process with the 8 petals you've just got, and then you'll have 32 petals. I'd recommend getting at least a stack of every colour because they're going to come in useful later on and you don't want to find yourself in the middle of a recipe and then needing to grow flowers again. Now that your petals are all sorted, there's 2 other really important ingredients you need to know about: living wood and living rock. Now these are really simple to make, but you're going to need a pure daisy in order to create them. Now we're going to use this petal apothecary to create new items from the petals that we've gathered. The pure daisy will require 4 white petals as well as a perfect Beniatite or Larimar. If you're using another mod pack that's not Vault Hunters, that will be a different item. Simply fill the apothecary with water, add your perfect Beniatite, add your 4 white petals, throw in some wheat seeds, and it will give you your pure daisy. Now here's some pure daisies that I prepared earlier. In order to make the living rock, you just surround it with stone, and in order to make the living wood, you guessed it, you just put a load of logs around it. Wait about 60 seconds for them to convert into their living forms, and then just mine them up. You don't need silk touch in order to do this. So now we've got some living wood, we can make the Wand of the Forest. Now this is going to be your main tool throughout the entire of Botania. Simply craft a few living wood into living wood twigs, combine these with a couple of petals, and a couple of perfect Beniatite or Larimar if you're playing Vault Hunters. This will make your Wand of the Forest, and it's got 2 modes you need to know about: bind mode and function mode. Bind mode is what's going to let you link different items together, especially useful for your mana management, whereas function mode makes things function. You can change the mode by holding shift and then right clicking with the Wand of the Forest in your hand. So now we've got all our tools sorted, we start getting to play with the fun mechanics of Botania, and the first one is mana production. Now the easiest way to think about mana production is in 3 stages. You've got generation, transportation, and storage. So what happens is some sort of flower generates some mana, but it can't do anything while it's staying in the flower, so you need a mana spreader. They will take all of the mana from any sort of flora that you've got and put them straight into the spreader. You then need to direct the spreader at some sort of storage, normally a mana pool. Once it's in the mana pool, you can start using it for a bunch of other stuff. You can make mana tablets to carry it around with you. Basically, the more mana you have, the better it is, and the more interesting things that you can do. So let's start with stage 1, the generation side of things. So I've made a little garden here of all of the plants that produce mana. So what you want is your wand in bind mode, and then shift right click on the flame, and then go to a mana spreader and shift right click on that. It will then give you a tick next to the Endoflame. You then want to link the mana spreader up to an empty mana pool. Really straightforward to do. Once that generates the mana, it goes to the spreader and goes into the mana pool. Now the Endoflame basically works as a furnace. It will take burnable items and convert them into mana. Take this block of coal for example. If I throw this on the Endoflame, it will set it on fire, and then that is now producing mana. Now one Endoflame by itself won't give you very much mana, but if you start adding multiple Endoflames and hooking them all up to the same mana spreader, drop a bunch more coal blocks, they will all set on fire and give you significantly more mana that is filling up very nicely. Now you can automate your fuel consumption by using either a dispenser or what's called an open crate. Now what an open crate will do is if you put a hopper into it and fill the hopper with different items, it will simply just drop it straight to the floor. Nice and simple, and then it can be picked up by the Endoflames. Now the great thing about the open crate as well is if you run a redstone signal to it, it will stop dropping items, which means that you can make a nice easy setup like this where if something falls onto the pressure plate, it sends a redstone signal around and stops the items from being dispensed. So that's great for an Endoflame setup because you can just put an absolute bunch of items into the hopper, it will drop them, and as the Endoflames pick them up, it will then release the pressure plate and allow you to drop more. And then once these are all burning, it won't pick up the items anymore, so they will just stay there, stopping this from activating. Now this can be scaled up to a ridiculous level, and you can have hundreds of Endoflames and hundreds of blocks of coal going constantly, and you will get a lot of mana doing it that way. However, the more efficient way of doing it is by using some of the other flowers, because they produce a lot more mana. So the next flower we're going to look at is the Entropinnyum. Now the Entropinnyum absorbs explosions and converts them into mana. So for example, if you put a TNT next to it, light the TNT, let it explode, it will be absorbed and give you quite a significant amount of mana. In fact, just one TNT gives you so much mana that it will stop the Entropinnyum from working for a significant period of time. Now the best way I've found to automate this one is simply using a dispenser into a block of obsidian, fill it with TNT, and then put an interval timer on the top. So when you activate this, it will explode, and it will be absorbed by the Entropinnyum. Once again, you can do multiple ones of these, activate the TNT more frequently, and each one will then absorb the impact. Now, once these are full, it will again trigger the explosions, so you're going to actually need a better mana spreader in order to make this setup work, and that's going to be your biggest block going forwards. Now the Entropinnyum setup is one that I personally use for all of my mana needs. It's really, really good, and honestly, it will do your mana needs well into the late game. I had mine running Looniums and all sorts of things, and it just works. The next flower is the Gormarilis. Now this will simply eat food. It's that simple. It will just grab the food and start eating it and turn that into mana. Now, the Gormarilis is a little bit strange because it wants different foods. So if you constantly feed it golden carrots, you're not actually going to get mana from it. What you need to do is cycle through multiple different foods. For example, if I throw in bread, it will give me mana for that. And then I do potatoes, it will give me mana for that. And then I go back to carrots, and it will give me more mana for that. The more saturating the food is, the better the mana production. But again, just be careful because you need to make sure you're constantly cycling food, otherwise it won't work properly. The next one is the hydrangeas. Now that one is really simple. It just eats water source blocks. It will generate the mana, send it over to the mana spreader, and then it will go into the mana pool. Now the one thing to be aware of is it will only do it once every 5 minutes. Now the flower that looks like the cake, the Kekimurus, if we put a cake on the ground, it will just eat the cake. You can just line up a bunch of cakes, it will slowly eat them. You can even set up an automator where it just dispenses cakes or something like that. I've not really experimented with this one too much, but it is quite a good one to have, especially if you're running a lot of cake vaults and you've got a ton of cake. Now the Narslimus does what you'd pretty much expect. It absorbs slimes to create mana. Now the problem is it will only eat naturally generated slimes. So if you generate slimes yourself, it's not going to work at all. It doesn't really need a demonstration. It basically eats slimes. Same as everything else, just with slime. Now the Rosa Arcana is one of my favourite flowers, probably just behind the Entropinnyum. What the Rosa Arcana does is it eats your experience levels in order to generate mana. So if I link this up, you will see that it will just start eating my XP bar and slowly give me a bunch of mana. You can stick these at your gold farm or some other XP generating place and get a ridiculous amount of mana. Really, really good, and it will do you well into the late game. Now the Shulk Me Not is an interesting one. If you get a Shulker to levitate another mob, it will levitate the mob, kill both the Shulker and the mob, and give you a lot of mana. Now it is a very intricate process and a very annoying farm to set up, so I don't like using this one and I've never been able to get it to work properly, but it does give you quite a bit of mana if you can actually get it to work. Now the Spectralus eats wool. So your first one is going to be a white wool, and that will give you a little bit of mana, and then it will be orange, then magenta, then light blue, then yellow, and if you need to check, then it will tell you actually on the flower what wool it needs. Now it's actually in the order that they appear in the creative menu, which is the order they appear on the NBT list. Each piece of wool gives you about a third of what a piece of TNT would do on the Entropinnyum. So it's a little bit easier to come by. The problem is getting it to cycle in the correct order, because it always has to be the correct order. If you do it out of order, it will just be immediately destroyed and you won't get any mana from it at all. Whereas if you throw the correct one, you get a little bit of mana. If you can get the setup for this going really well, then you can get a ridiculous amount of mana pretty cheaply, but it is a massive pain, and I prefer just using the Rosa Arcana. It's just a lot simpler. Now, the final one that I've got out here already is the Thermalily. That one eats lava. And same deal as with the Hydrangeas, it is once every 5 minutes, it will eat some lava, so just stick it next to a lava pool, and then it will slowly drain it over time. Not too much more to say about that one, to be completely honest with you, but it does give a decent amount of mana, so it's always worth looking into. Now, there's a couple that I haven't got out because they would actually interfere with the other flowers, and those are the Rafflesia, which eats other Botania flowers. There you go. It will just eat them and turn them into mana, which is kind of good, I guess, but some of these are extremely expensive, so things can go badly very, very quickly. The other one is a Munchdew, which basically eats trees. Well, leaves, trees. Basically, it will just slowly destroy this area and give you mana for it. So it does a decent job. It actually fills up pretty quickly if you're in a forest. You could use this with an automated tree farm, and that should work and give you quite a lot of mana. Oh, also, a super secret thing you can do with this Botania guide is subscribe to the Hellfire Mage YouTube channel. If you're enjoying the video so far and you want to see more guides like it, make sure to subscribe. So that is the mana generation side of things covered. Now, there's no right or wrong answer in how to generate mana, just whatever you're comfortable with and whatever you've got a lot of is going to be the one that's the right thing for you. If you want to make some really big farms to power them, you can do. If you just want to make a bunch of TNT, that is completely fine too. Now, those are the flowers that generate mana, but how do you even create the flower in the first place? Well, we're going back to our good old friend, the Petal Apoca 3. Now, the low-level flames, like the Endoflame, only require a bunch of the petals. This is why the Endoflame is one of the best ways to start your mana farm, because they are super cheap to make. But once you start looking at the higher end flowers such as the Entropinnyum, you're going to need these things called runes. Now, runes are where most of your material is going to go, and these are what are used to create high level crafting ingredients. And if we have a look at the rune, it will give us a bunch of items that we will need to find in order to make it. And what we do then is we put it on a runic altar. Now, we already have most of what we need for the Runic altar. We have the living rock that we made earlier, and a mana pearl is simply an ender pearl that you drop into a mana pool. Nice and simple, and the mana diamond is the same, but with a vault diamond, or a normal diamond if you're not playing Vault Hunters. Now, let's say we're making the Rune of Fire. What we need is mana powder, which is dropping redstone dust in mana, manasteel, which is dropping iron in mana, a perfect Beniatite or Valaramar, a nether brick, gunpowder, and netherwort. Now, same as the Apoca 3, you just throw the items onto the altar and they will all start floating around. But this time, when it's completed, you will see that it says it's not converting it into the Rune of Fire. So we've got all of the ingredients, but it's not converting. That's because we actually need to power this with mana in order to get it to convert. So if we link up our mana spreader here into the runic altar and then drop a bunch of coal onto the Endoflames, you will see that the mana spreader is giving this mana, and once it's entirely green, we will get our rune. Now, once this is completely full of mana, you will see it says add on some living rock and use your wand. So if you put the living rock on there, use your wand on it, it will generate the Rune of Fire. Now, if something gets stuck on here, just with an empty hand, shift right click, and you will get it off of the altar. Now the air, earth, fire and water runes are your basic ones, but after that you've got the seasonal ones such as summer, winter, autumn and spring, and then on top of that you've then got the 7 deadly sins, wrath, envy and all of those lot that are the tier 3 versions. For example, if we look at wrath, we need winter and earth in order to make that. The earth one needs water and earth to make that one as well, so you will start needing runes to make other runes and so on. Now the great thing is, if you are combining things on the runic table, you will get your runes back. So if you're making a summer rune using a fire rune, you will get both the summer rune and the fire rune back. However, if you are actually making flowers in the apothecary, you will not get your runes back, so just be aware of that and factor that into any calculations that you're making. So that is the basics done. Now it's time to move on to the more advanced stuff, starting with Terrasteel. Now Terrasteel can make some absolutely crazy weapons and armor, but I have some slight bad news for you. In Vault Hunters, it's been disabled. But don't you worry, there's plenty of other awesome stuff you can do with Terrasteel, even inside of Vault Hunters. So first thing you're going to need to make Terrasteel is a Terrasteel Agglomeration plate. Now you can make that using a fire, air, earth, water, and mana rune. And a mana rune is just using a lot of manasteel, a mana pearl, and a perfect Beniatile Larimar. So how you build this thing is you make a cross using living rock, fill the rest in with lapis blocks, and then stick your agglomeration plate in the middle. Now you're going to need to provide this with mana the same way that you did with the runic altar, however you can do this in a slightly different way using an item called a spark. So all you need to do is stick a spark on top of there and then stick one of these on top of a mana pool as well, and this will create a connection between this mana pool and the agglomeration plate. Now sparks can be modified using these spark augments. Now the two main ones are dominant and recessive. A mana pool with a dominant spark will pull all mana from around it into that specific pool, whereas a recessive one will do the opposite. It will push all of the mana out into other pools that it can. An isolated one will keep mana to that one pool and will not be affected by any dominant or recessive ones. And then finally, a dispersive one does pretty much the same as what a recessive one does, but it will also go into things like player inventories to recharge mana items in there. Getting a good grasp on this will allow you to handle your mana a lot easier, but those are the basic things that you need to know. So what we need to do is create a Terrasteel ingot, and we do that using all of these items. The big cost here comes from your vault diamonds because you need a normal vault diamond as well as a mana diamond. So Terrasteel can get extremely expensive. Now this time you don't throw them, you right click the items onto the plate until all 6 are there, and then it will start glowing like this. Now it's pulling all of the mana in from this pool straight over into the plate, and that will slowly convert into a Terrasteel ingot. And there we go. So that is how we make Terrasteel. Now what you are going to want to do for your very first Terrasteel ingot is you're going to want to break it down into some nuggets in order to be able to make these Natura pylons. Now this is your gateway into Elven Trading. Now Elven Trading is how you get some of your very high level crafting ingredients, and it is really important to understand how this works. First thing, you need to make 2 Natura pylons. Those require an Ender Watcher, which you can just craft quite easily, a Mana Pylon, which again, fairly simple to craft, and 3 Terrasteel nuggets. So 2 of those will cost you 6 nuggets. Stick these over 2 mana pools and make sure you've got a decent amount of mana already stored in them. Now you're also going to need to make the Elven Gateway. Firstly, you just need some living wood to start with, then you need some glimmering living wood. That can be made just by combining living wood with some vault dust. And then finally, you need the Elven Gateway core. Now funnily enough, the Elven Gateway core needs 3 Terrasteel nuggets and 6 living wood. So altogether, that comes to 1 Terrasteel ingot. Now once you've got all the items, make sure they're set up in a very similar pattern to this. Put down your Elven Gateway core and then right click it with your Wand of the Forest. It will use a decent amount of mana in there and activate the portal. Now it's not a normal portal, you can't run through it, It won't do anything if you stand inside, you won't even get distortion effects. What it actually is more like a villager trading system where you will throw items into it and it will give you better items out. For example, if we want some dream wood, which is used a lot later on, you need living wood and a perfect Beniatite or Larimar. Throw in the living wood, throw in the perfect Beniatite, and out comes the dream wood. Nice and simple, you can do this with quite a few items, and if you come across an item that you don't recognise in the crafting recipe, it's worth just checking to see if it's part of an elven trade. So now that we have access to more advanced ingredients, we can start making some really cool stuff. So first up, you've got your Band of Mana. Now this is basically used to give you that glowing blue bar at the bottom of the screen, which means that you can carry mana around with you and use them to power a bunch of items. The Crystal Bow is my next favourite, which basically drains mana instead of using any durability, and it draws back twice as quick as a normal bow, so you can fire much quicker and kill a lot more mobs. Next up, you have the Ring of Magnetization. Now this one is pretty simple. If you throw something out, there will be a short delay, and then after a few seconds, it will actually drag it straight in towards you, and then you can pick it straight back up. Now, if you're just actually gathering items, you can cut them down and they will immediately come into you, whereas if you throw something out, it delays it for a little bit so it doesn't pull it straight back in for you. This one is incredibly useful for the vault, especially because breaking chests doesn't count as you dropping items, and they will go straight into your inventory. The next one is the Ring of Far Reach. That basically does what you'd expect it to, and it gives you additional levels in reach. Again, a brilliant one to use when looting the vault. Saves you a few skill points at least. Now the Sojourner's Sash is also extremely good in the vault. When you equip it, you start running much quicker, and in addition to that, you can also get the automatic step up ability without having to spend any skill points. Now this becomes even more powerful when you pair it with something like a Cirrus Amulet, because that allows you to jump twice. That's right, double jump in Minecraft, and because the Sojourner Sash also gives you a little bit of a height boost on your jumps, this becomes really good. And I'd recommend this to basically anyone looting any vaults or just running any activities in Minecraft. It's just beyond amazing. Now the Benevolent Goddess's Charm is also great. What that does when you equip it, it stops creeper explosions from blowing up any tiles next to you. So if we summon in a creeper here, it may nearly kill me, but it doesn't blow up any of the blocks, which stops your inventory just being completely full of random rubbish. Now, the Terra Shatterer is probably the strongest upgrade that you're going to get from Botania within Vault Hunters, because it breaks more blocks than basically anything else, except maybe a mining gadget. So when you activate the Terra Shatterer, you can basically just run forwards and take out entire walls super quickly. Look at that. That is honestly just a little bit ridiculous, and it's just... there aren't even words to describe how useful this is when you're in a mine room, because it is beyond amazing. Now, it does take a ridiculous amount of Terrasteel, and you have to charge it up all the way from the lowest tier all the way up to double S tier just by giving it mana, and trust me, it takes a ridiculous amount of mana. So it is a very long investment, but you can get this quite early on as soon as you can make Terrasteel. It doesn't really have that many high requirements. Now, the final one I just love because it looks really cool, and that is the Rod of the Bifrost. What I can do is just fire it there, and it will create a staircase for me. And then I can just get straight out of here. And yeah, the Bifrost Rod is great. You can't use it in a vault, but some things you have to get just because they're a little bit cool. If we look at the upgraded versions of the items we've just gone over, specifically the Nimbus Amulet, the Globetrotter's Sash, and the Crimson Pendant, you will see that they actually need this item here called a Gaia Spirit. Now, there's only one way to get Gaia Spirits, and that is by killing the Gaia boss. Now, these upgrades are definitely worth getting because the Nimbus Amulet allows you to jump 1, 2, 3 times, and you saw the extra height boost there, and that came from the Globetrotter Sash, which makes you run even quicker. Now, the Crimson Pendant is also great. It just makes you entirely immune to lava. It's a very good substitute, but you should just be using Cobalt Apples if you're playing Vault Hunters anyway. And finally, there's the Gaia Mana Spreader. When I told you earlier that your bottleneck was the normal mana spreaders, this is the most upgraded version you can get, and it is very much worth upgrading to these as soon as you possibly can. So let us head over and go have a look at the Gaia fight. Now you're going to need to set up an area like this in order to fight the Gaia, and you're going to need 4 Gaia pylons. The Gaia pylon just needs a mana pylon like we made before, as well as the Elementium and Pixie Dust, which are both got from Elven Trading. Now once you've got 4 of them, set them up around a beacon and have the beacon activated at the top, and then all you need is a Terrasteel ingot. You just need to press the Terrasteel ingot on the beacon, and then you get a pretty awesome guitar solo and just some epic rock music. And all you need to do is slowly kill this Gaia Guardian, who looks just like me for some reason, but I guess that kind of makes sense. Now once the Gaia gets to about 25 health, they will start summoning a lot of mobs for you to kill. Do this in the daytime and they basically all die for you. It's really useful. Now once the mob's dead, the Gaia will come back down and you can just finish them off nice and easily. And there you go, you get a lovely challenge completed, as well as getting some awesome Gaia spirits. So now we can use these Gaia spirits to upgrade all of our gear and make some absolutely epic things. Now, if you're not playing Vault Hunters and you're playing a different pack, you can also have a second level Gaia fight. What you will need is this Gaia Spirit Ingot, and then use that instead of the Terrasteel, and you will be able to fight the level 2 Gaia for much better rewards and some just crazy upgrades. But you'll notice a theme here. In Vault Hunters, that's been disabled. But do you know what's not disabled? Awesome conversion farms that will convert your stone to andesite, andesite to diorite, and so on. Now this is all being done with the magic of this Alchemy Catalyst. Now there's a lot of things that you can do with an Alchemy Catalyst. If you go into JEI and just press U on it, you can go through all of the different things that you can create, and there's a ridiculous amount of stuff that you can get from the Alchemy Catalyst that is going to help you so much in getting those ultra recipes or just making cool farms. Now, if your mod pack has it, I'd strongly recommend using these item routers, because what they can do, the top one can pull items from some sort of storage and then drop it, and the second one can vacuum the items up and then send it away. And just with one lever, you can just activate it and it will do the whole thing for you and just over time slowly convert it. You can also upgrade these so it does it significantly quicker, and just watch how quick that's going up. It is pretty epic, and as long as you've got mana to do it, you can just go AFK over somewhere, do some other stuff, and that will just be converting for you. I've managed to do hundreds of thousands every day, and it honestly is just super worth doing, especially in Vault Hunters. Now, there is a second type of Alchemy Catalyst that is called a Conjuration Catalyst. So if you replace those, what this one will do for you is basically throw in a stack of Glowstone, and it will just duplicate the Glowstone. Now you have to be a little bit careful because it does set off a chain reaction and keep duplicating what you've duplicated. So here, if we pick everything up, we've got about 4 stacks there. So maybe just try not to crash the server. It can happen, unfortunately. I have done it. But again, you can duplicate quite a lot of items here. You've got coal leg, Glowstone, netherrack. There's some really good stuff that you can duplicate there. Quartz is another really good one. So that's how you set up a really easy farm using Botania, and it is very simple to be able to do. Now, while sunflowers can be used to generate mana, sunflowers actually use mana and do different things with them. For example, the Loonium will spawn different mobs around you that will give you special dungeon loots. The Vinculotus will stop Endermen teleporting away from you. The Tiger's Eye will stop creepers coming towards you and will stop them exploding nearby. The Polydesiac will feed and breed animals for you, really good for making some sort of meat farm. The Hopper Hawk functions pretty similar to an actual hopper, just puts items in chests. And the Bellathorn will kill any nearby mobs for you. It won't give you XP, but it's really good for making mob farms. There's a bunch more and you can check those on the wiki, but these are the ones that I've found most useful in my playthrough. Now, the final item I want to talk about is the Mana Mirror. Now what this does is you can set it to mirror a specific mana pool, and as that mana pool starts to fill up, then your mana mirror will also start to fill up as well. And you can use the mana mirror wherever you are, and it will just give you a permanent source of mana. So you can have this constantly generating mana, chunk load it or something like that, and as you're running about, you've always got that guaranteed mana. It's a really good item. Just be aware, in Vault Hunters, it doesn't work inside the Vault dimension, so you can't use it there. But you can use it everywhere else, and it's pretty cool. Now, Botania has a lot more items than what I've gone through. There's an absolute ton of them. Feel free to just go through, have a look, see what things that I've missed out. And if you think there's anything other people need to know about, stick it down in the comments. I'm guaranteed to have missed something on here, but that's where we will leave it for today. Thanks for watching, everyone. Make sure you subscribe if you're not already. Like the video if you did find it helpful. I've been Hellfire Mage, and I will see you next time.